In this short video, we're going to take a look at how you can make your run-up sprinting more effective. Although it may appear that the dynamics of sprinting 100 meters or 200 meters, for example, are the same as those required for the long and triple jump, there are actually some specific differences. We'll break the run-up down into its three constituent phases: acceleration, alignment, and attack. And I'll talk about the specific requirements of each phase and also the differences between the needs of the long jump and the triple jump run-up. Like the track sprinter, the long jumper needs to accelerate quickly, but not as quickly. They need more control and they need to be more deliberate on their steps. The run-up is very much set up by those initial 3 to 4 steps. We practice the acceleration phase repeatedly, i.e. separately, in order to develop that consistency. We've recently begun to experiment with the thighs moving away and the feet moving away at the point of acceleration rather than thinking about pushing back. For many of the guys in my group, they found this an easier way to accelerate. As with sprint starts, a low heel recovery is used over those initial steps in order to get the foot down quicker to the track and create more momentum. When should you look at the board? This is a perennial problem that comes up all the time when it comes to the run-up. I encourage my athletes to look at the board with their eyes through the acceleration and alignment phases as necessary. But when they reach the attack phase, their chin and their gaze should be straight ahead. The idea is that as they enter the attack phase, they will know that they are going to hit the board and will be able to cast their gaze ahead of them and thus not affect their takeoff and their in-flight characteristics by looking down at the board. There are also specific requirements of the long jump takeoff in particular and the last 2 steps, with the second to last being flat-footed to enable the hips to come through much more quickly into the takeoff. So these also need to be factored in to the attack phase for the long jump. Looking down at the board, as I've said, will have negative consequences. I believe it's crucial to adopt a high position with the neck and head at the point of takeoff, with the chin parallel to the ground. This will lift the body into the takeoff. The reverse will happen if you look down at the ground. You'll see that Paul, like Pippa in the last video, keeps their head up as they approach the board, and this will get a much better takeoff, as I say. But to do this requires a great amount of practice and a lot of specific work. After the acceleration phase, the jumper enters the second stage, the alignment phase of the run-up. An upright sprinting posture is attained and speed continuously builds. It's crucial to remain relaxed. You're not sprinting against somebody next to you. You need to be in control of what you're doing and be very deliberate. You have to make an effective jump. Let's take a look at this competitive 16-meter jump from Jonathan. He accelerates confidently and strongly, and as he passes the wind gauge, is upright and well into the alignment phase of the run-up. Jonathan enters the attack phase positively and confidently. His knees are high, as are his hips. I'm going to make some comment about hip height, particularly when we talk about the long jump, as this is an area of debate. With the triple, it's a case of running as smoothly through the takeoff as you can and therefore it's important to practice this in training. You'll notice minimal adjustment as Jonathan gets into the hop. There's no slowing or braking as he travels across the board. I mentioned previously that there are differences between the long jump and the triple jump run-ups, in particular in regard to the long jump and the way the takeoff is set up. This requires a flat foot on the penultimate second to last stride into the board. This enables the hips to come through more quickly into the takeoff and also enables the free leg to move more quickly. There are various ways to practice this, as you'll see from some of the examples above, i.e. using mats, the idea being that the step between the two mats is positioned flat-footed. This is another version here using just the one mat. As I've mentioned in some of my other videos, we'll also place a mark on the run-up, about 2 meters away from the board for a female and 2 meters 30 for the guys. This is the position for the penultimate step. So when we do run-ups, I actually encourage the jumpers to position themselves on the mark that's specific to them. This will therefore set up their takeoffs. With the long jump run-up, and indeed with the triple jump run-up, it's much more of a case than just running and hoping for the best as you hit the board. You need to set yourself up for the jump, whether that be flat-footed, as is the case with the long jump, or running through the takeoff, as is the case with the triple jump. I mentioned earlier about hip height coming into the board, particularly for the long jump, and this is an area that I'm still developing my thoughts on. However, having had jumpers that have jumped over 7 meters 80 with a relatively low hip height as they approach the board, I'm beginning to think that the more old school thoughts on running with high hips into the takeoff is not necessarily just the only way to get distance. Indeed, Oliver, who you've just seen jumping there in the red top, used to run with a much higher knee lift into the board, but is now running with a lower knee lift and hip height, as he believes that this will take him through the board more quickly. This is something that he's worked on at his time in the United States, and strangely enough, it parallels, as I've said, some of my more recent thinking on how the long jump takeoff can be performed. My thoughts are very much evolved in keeping with the different athletes that I've got in the group and the different ways that they run. Some naturally have higher knee lifts than others, while some do more work, they're more pushers when they're running rather than pullers, i.e. more work behind the body. Therefore, run-up style has to be adapted to the particular running style of the athlete. To me, the most vital component of the attack phase in the long jump is not lowering the hips unduly. The penultimate step should only result in a minimal lowering of 1 to 2 centimeters. Speed must be maintained through the board. A lower hip carriage can enable that speed to be transferred more quickly. However, foot contacts still need to be made on the forefeet to the front of the spikes, and the knees need to move away from the body. Whether you use a lower or a higher hip carriage, it's very important that your torso is upright at the point of takeoff. Forward lean will result in a compromised takeoff position and the free leg being squashed against the torso as it moves through, and a lean back will result in a breaking off of the board. So we want a neutral type of position as we run into the board, with the torso upright, as I've said, and this will enable a much more effective jump for both the triple and the long jump. As usual, thanks for watching and good luck with your training and competitions. and please subscribe to the channel.